Bless you. So I am sitting in my kitchen and I'm actually going to have a couple of these cookies. If you've never had these cookies, not very popular, or at least I haven't seen a lot of them in America. Lotus cookies, they're delicious. Usually at one of our favorite places, Brown Sugar, we get like a very small version, a pack of them, and actually say Lotus on them. Usually the ones we get at Brown Sugar are like 1/4 the size or like 1/3 the size of these Lotus cookies. These are delicious. They have like a little hint of ginger in them that makes them really good. It says established in 1932. You know, a lot of things in England like tend to have a much broader history than we did in Los Angeles. But I love the variety of. It's so funny. I'm right next to her. I love the variety of. They call them biscuits. In the United States, we call them cookies. Um, because in England, God bless them, they've normalized eating cookies all the time. They call it biscuits, or they just say tea, and you just casually have thrown a couple biscuits with your tea, which is awesome. And I'm not mad at that. That's wonderful. What's going on right now is, and one of the reasons I want to do a video right now is there's a lot of rioting in Los Angeles, or at least we hear a lot about on social media. Now, we're pretty far removed because we're in England, so we hear a lot of the information on social media, or the news, actually mainly social media. We get most of our news from social media. Now, there's a couple reasons for this, and I think that part of it is because we're connected into social media, we're plugged into that for networking purposes. Like I've been doing a lot of improv projects and administrating a lot of improv projects on the, oh, I got a haircut. Monica, give me a haircut today. I like it. But I administrate a lot of improv projects and I network on social media, as well as there's just a lot of socializing that goes on social media. Talk to people, crack jokes, check in with them. So then you kind of hear what's going on in people's lives and what their views are. And so that's why you get a lot of news from social media. But what's going on right now, which I think is you're unable to ignore it, is the protests and the rioting going on in the United States. It's really, that's the whole video series is about. It's just kind of really talking about what's been going on in very raw, honest ways. And I think that the rhetoric used when you discuss these things is very important. Whether people are rioting or protesting, it's very important. And the worst president in the history of the United States, Donald Trump, has even been very aware of it, even though he pretends not to when he refers to when it's protests of people of color, he calls them thugs, and when it's white supremacists, he makes sure to identify there's good people there. Right. So he's very aware of the rhetoric he uses when he talks, and I think that we should be aware of the rhetoric we use when we discuss certain things. Now, there has also been evidence of people that are trying to instigate riots, and the conspiracy theorist in me, which it's funny, in England, conspiracy theorist is like, oh, you don't want to be one, and I'm like, conspiracy theories are interesting, they're fascinating, but it looks like they're trying to incite riots to show that protesting is bad, so there can be a lockdown, greater enforcement, delay the election, or even like start some sort of internal civil war. Stephen Miller and I forgot his name, but was really in the beginning was really big into chaos in government, and that's predominantly what Trump's been doing with his influence. Is he's been creating a divided America, and he's been doing his best to do so, and obviously it's been successful. Now, it makes it really scary because it doesn't, to me, it's like there's so many people protesting, and I've seen so many pictures of peaceful protests and people even cleaning up after the protests, which is wonderful. And then there's people that try to instigate or begin the more violent or looting or riotous acts in order to place any sort of large scale disagreement or large scale demonstration against what's going on in a negative light. And then and then out of 3 hours of protesting, they're going to post the pictures or videos that they think will help their fan base define the protests in that light. It happens all the time. It's happened for years. And so to be careful what terminology we use, and I'm not going to give you an answer because I don't have one myself. But what I will say is pictures, and there has been evidence, and there's been statements by police officers that sympathize with the plight of what people are going through by taking a knee during the demonstrations, or saying if you're involved with any sort of white supremacist, or if you're support that killed George, then turn in your badge, kind of thing. And to me, like that's what I think we need is that instead of viewing the police as a division, instead of viewing the police as a complete separate mechanism, like police are people. They're affected by what's going on in America as well. So not only do we view police as like stormtroopers in Star Wars. Stormtroopers in Star Wars were masks and automatists, and they got shot and just disappeared. Like we can't view law enforcement that way, and nor should they, because they go home to a family, kids, and loves and losses and all that kind of stuff as well. So we don't view them that way. At the same time, they can't view themselves that way either. They can't view themselves as like an elite or removed crowd. So when I've seen these sort of like evidence of like, hey, let's all listen to each other, we're on the same side, that's really the sign of hope. That's really the sign that the United States needs to hear, because a lot of what people are protesting would literally benefit law enforcement, and a lot of the people in law enforcement, it would literally benefit them as well because they're humans. And this one phrase I heard, which I think really resonates with me, is that it's not black versus white, it's everybody else versus races. Like, and that's what it is. And like, so when you're conscripted like by the military or law enforcement, you are act as a unit because that's that's one of the hugest benefits of being in an organized force like that, is that we work as a team and we don't necessarily question what the decisions are being made. And I'm not asking you to question the decision being made. What I'm saying is, instead of acting as a separate part of humanity, act as we're all part of the same humanity. We're all sort of part of the same purpose. And it's really crazy because my studies right now are very difficult to focus on studying, because not only do I have what's currently going on in where I live in England, but then I've just been thinking so much about the people affected by all these incidents going on in the United States, and what they represent. For it to have gotten to this point, that there's a pandemic going on and people are still gathering large droves, I think about all those struggles and all those fears and all that stuff that led to that point, and my heart goes out to that. And then I think about people going through that are like active and trying to make the world a better place. And then people that may not have the courage to do that, or just don't have the resources to do that, on the outskirts being affected by that. There's going to be a lot of criticism of like, that's not the right way to do it. And I think that's something I've experienced my whole life in personal relationships, as well as organization and professional relationships, organizational and professional relationships. When there's something that you see that's wrong, or there's something that a change that you'd like to be seen, and you're not in a place of influence, when you speak up, the easiest, and in my opinion, the most saccharine, you know how saccharin's like sugar, but it's artificial and it's not really healthy and there's no nutrients to it. The most saccharine way to attack someone is to say, well, I appreciate what you said, but you didn't say it right, or you didn't do it the way I wanted you to do it. And then the focus becomes about the way you did something, whether the message itself has merit or not. And then once you're focused on, okay, well, you didn't say it right, then all this energy will be spent on that. And then it's like, well, why are you making a big deal about this thing in the first place? And nothing's changed. And like I said, it's happened in professional, it's happened in personal relationships. It's like, I think what you said is right, but you just didn't say it right. And what typically happens is the person that has that opinion is in the person that's in a place of privilege, or the person that's in a place of power. By going, um, you may have pointed out a flaw, and instead of going, hey, let's talk about that message. Let's talk about what you're really trying to say. They're talking all about the means. Well, let's talk about the way you said it, right? Now there are instances, I'm not saying across the board in a big swath, that how you say something isn't important. It's important. Tact is important, as well as just because you have a greater message does not mean you can oppress, or you can be offensive or hurt other people. Just because a message doesn't mean it can be a weapon that you can use to hurt other people. Because I've seen people do that too, where they have a good message and they use it to leverage themselves in a place of power and make others look bad, just for the purpose of making others look bad. Now, I agree that's not good either. But I think what's happening here, but the reason I bring this whole thing up is because I think what's happening here with these protests and the people that are demonstrating is, you are not going to solve the problem with law enforcement. That's like saying, there's a human body and you start having coughs and sneezes, and so by blowing your nose and coughing into your hands, you're going to make it better. That's not what's going to happen. No matter how many people arrest, the only thing you can do is up the scale until you've threatened and pushed people into a place of fear where they're too afraid to demonstrate. What you have to do is understand why they're protesting, understand why they're demonstrating, and listen. Because what happens is you can only either increase fear to control the people, or you can increase curiosity to bring people together. That's what I'm learning so much in my studies right now with improv, which is so funny, is that the greatest barrier the greatest barrier to collaboration is fear. And typically it's like fear, I'm not going to get my reward, fear, I'm going to fail, fear, I'm going to all these different things. Like fear is the biggest reason why people collaborate. And so if we were to take that from improv to a macro improv scale, that's why certain companies don't work together or certain companies work against each other. But then if we were to take it out of the improv ecosystem and pull it further away and talk about like the country, the universe, humanity, and stuff. The reason that people don't collaborate is because they're afraid that they're not going to get the same amount of resources or rewards, or that the fail and make it look bad and everything. So fear is like the greatest enemy to collaboration, and the greatest and the opposite of fear. The opposite of fear is curiosity. The opposite of fear is not strength or hope or none of that stuff, because fear is a divisive it's an emotion that causes action where you divide away from each other. Fear is an emotion that causes you to step away and create barriers and defend yourself. Um, Curiosity, so the opposite isn't hope. Hope is that things will be better. Hope doesn't necessarily cause hope is a component of fear in my studies, is that the reason that you have fear is because you hope that things could be better, or you think that things could go the right way. Because if you don't have hope, then it's not fear, it's depression, or it's just complete, like everything's gone, it doesn't matter, this is the way things are, right? So hope is a component of fear. It's not the opposite of fear. The opposite of fear is curiosity, because whereas fear is the engine behind stepping away and removing, and usually leads to anger, usually leads to people being angry with each other because you're trying to create distance, emotional distance between themselves and the thing that they're afraid of. Um, Curiosity is the opposite, where you see something and you want to understand it. So you lean into it, you ask questions, you try to stay in its circumference as much as possible to learn more. What happens is the difference between fear and curiosity is fear, we're going to put fear on this side of the screen, we'll put curiosity on this side of the screen. The opposites are, with fear, you're trying to get away, and you have what's like cognitive dissonance, what it's called. So in curiosity, you have what's called an incomplete gestalt, right? And it's so funny. The reason I know what a gestalt is because of Dungeons and Dragons. You used to have gestalt characters, which are a mix of barbarian and wizard and thief and rogue and all this kind of stuff, and they come together. So it's like a blending of stuff, right? It's supposed to be like a perfect character. So in curiosity, what you have is you have an incomplete gestalt. Is you have, or is it gestalt? I always thought it was gestalt. You have an incomplete gestalt, which means you have a value system or interest or agency or you have, but it's incomplete. So what you do is you're curious to find out more to complete this gestalt, even if you never do. So for example, improv, I'm never going to have a complete picture of improv, and that's what we see. I have an incomplete picture of it, and I keep on trying to explore it. So that's why I'm curious about improv. I keep on digging deeper. But fear is the exact opposite, is you feel like you do have a complete gestalt, is you do feel like what I know is enough and I want to stay away from that. You do have fear of the unknown, but a lot of it's like what I have, what I can expect and what I know is more important and is thereby threatened, so I'm staying away from the unknown. So those are kind of the difference between fear and curiosity. And so I just and so to bring it back to the very beginning of this, these cookies, no, just kidding. To bring it back to the beginning of this, is that Los Angeles, with the demonstrations and protests, instead of being afraid of them and throwing more law enforcement and more tear gas, more guns at them, bring curiosity and understand why. I think you probably could get more change in this time with the microphone than you could get with a gun. Is to give people the chance to express themselves and to have influence, because I think what people are feeling is they don't feel like they have control. I'm not saying throw control at everybody that protests. What I'm saying is listen to them, let them have influence, let them have an impact. Give them a platform, give them some place to where they can say why they're protesting, what they're feeling. And then don't dismiss it. Incorporate and roll that into the morale of America and say, okay, and here's the thing is, if you've been paying attention, what they're saying and what's affecting them is very obvious. Financial insecurity, healthcare that costs $80,000 if you go in for a weekend. So there's all these different things that are just like basic human emotional things. And in this time with a really shitty president, as well as like this pandemic, those fears are raised, and so they're demonstrating. Be curious, lean into it, find out why they're doing what they're doing. Because if you meet fear with fear, if you meet evil with evil, it just makes more evil, and we become the divided states of America, right? But I think curiosity is probably what's better here.